sucks. Hey!
The Lost Art with Andrew Cox podcast. Marine Corps League and Till Valhalla Project Ambassador. Now streaming on all major podcast platforms. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast that has given a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast. That podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we're having a part 5 of a series we've been doing with Marine retired Colonel Mike Fallon. But before we get into the episode, are you enjoying the podcast? And make sure you go to the website. That's thelostart.podbean.com. Go check us out, see what we're all about. There's a couple ways you can help support us. You can become a patron by doing a monthly donation, or you can go in and click on that merchandise tab, go in there, get your cool hat, shirt, something like that. But help support us in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Also, a big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project. They're out there doing amazing things. If you don't know anything about them, go check them out at their website. And even if you do know something about them, go check them out because there's some new stuff on there. You could probably find you some cool gear to help support them in their mission as well. But that's tillvalhallaproject.com. Are you a Marine veteran? Are you missing that bond you had on active duty? Then I have a place for you. Join the only congressionally chartered Marine Corps veteran service organization, the Marine Corps League. Get that brother and sisterhood back in your life. Become one of the fewer, the prouder, a Marine Corps League member. All right, we're back. I got Mike Fallon here. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Jay, I'm having a great day, and thanks for having me on the Marine Corps League's premier podcast.
I love it. Yeah, no, this is great. You know, I don't know if everybody can see it, but I got this cool little hat here. Something about a book that's coming out here soon. So I'm excited to get the book, Hill 119, and I'm going to read all through it, man. It's going to be a good time.
Oh, AJ, I appreciate you rocking that cami hat with a little blood Hill 119 on the front. It comes out 15 August, and you can pre-order it today either at Casemate, my publisher's website, or Amazon. But we didn't come here today to talk about Hill 119, I don't think.
You got to put a plug in though, so we got to try and get the sales up. So it's all good. Well, I guess let's start. This is part 5. So, and your episodes have been doing really, really well. I mean, you're incredibly detailed in your memory of everything that's going on. It's fantastic. It's awesome to hear so much detail about what you went through in the Marine Corps.
Well, AJ, thanks for having me. Our last episode, we finished up as being the nation's representative. We, the 1st Battalion, 6 Marines, in Key West, Florida, where we were the security unit for the Mariel boat lift. And the battalion had about 4 months down in Key West, working in the old seaplane hangars. And then closing down the place was about another month. And it rotated back to good old Swamp Lejeune. I got to move from being the 3 up to becoming the executive officer of the 1st Battalion, 6 Marines. And where we are headed is we are headed from humidity and balmy palm trees to above the Arctic Circle in 2 months, when the 1st Battalion, 6 Marines is scheduled to be airlifted as a reinforced battalion landing team to Bardufoss, Norway, which is about 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle, and winter over. It had started with my battalion commander, Thomas Campbell, saying units with missions get priorities not only in people and training.
Right.
And so about 7 months earlier, we had negotiated with the 2nd Marine Division G3 shop on the TEEP, the Training Exercise Employment Plan, for the battalion to exercise the air alert capability and demonstrate it the one which we actually just did for real to
Right.
Key West, but in the planning books to go to North Norway and take the battalion up there for the winter. Before I go there, I need to back up a little bit and give some credit where credit's due.
Okay.
Now the Marine Corps doctrine and policy had us as cold weather people, and we certainly had the experience in the Korean War with cold weather and freezing weather and bad
Very true.
conditions. And our hats off to those Korean War veterans, 75th anniversary year. And that's where the Marine Corps School at Bridgeport, California started and got its roots and its heritage. And that school still in existence today, runs a winter package for cold weather training and runs a summer package to teach Marines how to climb cliffs and do cliff assaults and other specialized skills. A great
Right.
training venue and asset in the Marine Corps inventory. In 1978, a name you'll recognize, Lieutenant General Robert H. Barrow was the commanding general of the Fleet Marine Forces Atlantic. So
Okay.
he had all the Marines east of the Mississippi then and had all the contingencies for the Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
He visited North Norway and the Northern Command of Norway in the winter of 1978. And he was visiting a friend, actually, at the time, Captain Bruce Gumbar. And Gumbo had a company reinforced from the 2nd Marine Regiment who had the
Mm-hmm.
cold weather mission of the 2nd Division, while the 8th Marine Regiment had the Mediterranean mission, which meant train for the Med, provide units to go on Marine amphibious units. The unit in those days that's equivalent to today's Marine Expeditionary Unit. So just flip the name amphibious to expeditionary, same deal.
Right.
Marine Air Ground Task Force on Navy shipping, giving the Marine Corps and the nation its 911 force.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce had a hard time up there, and General Barrow saw this and tasked and commissioned Bruce when he got back to become an advocate and to write up the lessons learned at the tactical level and those next. But first, General Barrow, after getting briefed by the Norwegian Army Northern Command,
Mm-hmm.
realized that Norway had a border with the USSR. So as Norway does that dogleg right up around Sweden and Finland in the north, there's a common border that's close to the Murmansk Peninsula, and all the Russian USSR capabilities there that needed to be guarded by Norway, and it's known
Mm-hmm.
as the northern flank of NATO. Now, in the O plan, the big battle in NATO was always heavy armored units in Germany versus heavy armored units from the Soviet Union fighting a little gap called the Volga Gap. And that's an army fight in the war plan. And the
Mm-hmm.
Marine Corps was always afraid of getting sucked into the O plan as cannon fodder. General Barrow realized that the northern flank would be an opportunity for the Marine Corps to fight on its own as a MAGTF and provide significant capability as a flanker in a large war with the Soviet Union. So
Mm.
at the strategic level, his vision that he brought back and put into practice first by ordering the Marine Corps under his command, the units, now annually to start going to North Norway, making the commitment, working with the Navy. Then annually we would go to North Norway and we would gradually get bigger and better in our capabilities. So the credit, I said, first at the strategic level to our former Commandant General Barrow, who had the vision of the northern flank for the Marine Corps, and then came back and made it happen in the O plans. At the tactical level, at the bottom, Bruce had suffered, and his company had suffered, and he came back and he was given, with the oversight of Barrow, the leaders of 2nd Division saluted smartly, the job to educate the 2nd Marine Regiment and the Marine Corps. And what he needed to educate them on was the difference between cold weather and Arctic weather. And it is a significant difference.
Right.
Cold weather, you get cold. In Arctic weather, you die.
Right.
And the Arctic weather is the most severe weather on the planet, along with, it's probably more severe in the Arctic than the Antarctic. The Antarctica is so dry. Anyway, we'll let the polar experts argue that. The harsh climate in North Norway, 250 miles up around the Dogleg Right, 10% of the year, right in the bottom of the year, it's going to be a minus 45 degrees below zero.
Ooh.
Minus 45, comma, with a 40 knot wind, which you do the math, the wind chill is above 100, and you give drifting snow 10 to 20 feet. What that means is when you fight in that temperature,
Right.
the first duty of the leader and the fighters is to survive. The second duty is to learn how to maneuver to your advantage and get on the defensive, because you can maneuver and then get on the defense and survive easier. And then your third job is to fight. So we had the rule of the thirds, and at minus 45, you don't even think the thirds work. I think the thirds work at minus 0 or maybe to minus 20. You get 20 minutes outside with 1/3 of your unit. And then you get 40 minutes inside with 2/3 of your unit. And that rotates every 20 minutes. And you have to have warming tents, and then you have to have living tents, because it's a step down process. So you have to feed enough calories, think 6,000 to 10,000 calories a day per Marine, which means you're doing hot wets. And hot wets in Arctic temperature means thermos bottles for every Marine. It means a 24/7 mission to the cooks and bakers of the battalion that are in the TO to keep hot wets going, soup, drink 24/7, hot wets in all the tents, plus food. And so you get to move for 20 minutes, or you get to work on a defensive position, and then you're back in another squad. So in a platoon, it's one squad out for 20 minutes, 2 squads back. The lieutenant, the platoon sergeant, and a right guide each have a squad. They have their tents, and you have a platoon position somewhere. The Marine Corps did not know how to do that. The Marine Corps trained for cold weather. So Bruce Gumbar moved to the 3 shop from being a company commander of the 2nd Marine Regiment and set up the cold weather training organization there. and started the education. And the Marine Corps started slow. It stair-stepped and used Fort Drum in New York and Fort McCoy in Wisconsin to take Marines from Camp Lejeune up to those two National Guard camps where you could check out equipment and train in the winter. Now, in the 1978 to 82, the Marine Corps equipment, Captain Gumbar's second point, was Korean era cold weather equipment, not Arctic equipment. Korean weather wooden skis that looked like 2x6s with one leather strap for your heel, one leather strap over your instep, and it was like plowing snow with a 2x6 that heavy to do cross country skiing, or big horseshoes. The cold weather tents were 10-man tents with Arctic stoves, but put real meaning into the term fire watch, which we all learned at boot camp.
Right.
Because the Arctic stove in the center of this round 10-man Korean era canvas tent, chimney smokestack, went through the center hole in the top, came down to its metal bay, which you put wood into.
Right.
And if you put ashes and sparks up the steel stove and they flicked over onto the canvas tent, there was a possibility to burn the tent. So
Right.
besides freezing to death, an Arctic fire, you could burn yourself to death. So the fire watch was not only a no sleep position, it was the main way you stoked the stove to stay warm.
Right.
In a 1/4-inch canvas tent that did not stop 40-knot winds. So Bruce continued to educate people, did yeoman's work. Colonel Campbell, Lieutenant Colonel Campbell at the time, realizing he was the Air Alert Battalion, used that in his argument to exercise the Air Alert to go to North Norway exercise in the winter of 80 that would have gone traditionally to the 2nd Marines. And in fact, the 2nd Marines that winter also sent a battalion up there to an exercise. It was an annual exercise called Anorak Express. And the unit in the 3 shop helped train that unit. The other battalion in a totally different exercise that went to an exercise called Cold Winter 80-81 was the 1st Battalion, 6th Marines.
Okay.
And so when I had been to 3, I had gone to the planning conferences with the Norwegians and the Brits. The Brits keep a Royal Marine Company commando in North Norway every winter, have since World War II, with their Arctic experience, and they have some experts in cold weather training. So I had gone to the initial, the middle, and the final planning conference to exercise this Air Force lift into the dual use civilian military Norwegian runway at Bardufoss,
Right.
Norway. Well, in October, the Soviet Union was rattling their swords, and the administration, and now General Barrow has moved up the chain. Lieutenant General Dolph Swank is now the 3-star in the Atlantic, and General Barrow, of course, is a commandant. And the northern flank wanted to be demonstrated. He said, we will send a MAU. Okay, in those days, there weren't a lot of standing MEUs or MAUs. You got a MAU by double hatting a staff or creating a staff. They created a staff for the Mao that traditionally went to the Med and the 8th Marines at those days were back at Camp Geiger preparing the next battalion. In this case, in October, the 6th Marine Regiment got the knighted, the dual hat, and B 36 Marine Amphibious Unit overnight.
Okay.
And the regimental S3 officer was a major by the name of Dick Verkaderen. And you remember he appeared in one of our episodes when he was in the 3 shop of Government House working for the United Nations Troop Superperson organization. Yeah. And of course, he became the S3 of 36 Mao in October of 80, with the Mao having to be up sail from Norfolk in Morehead City and get to Norway in November. So he is having a little sucking of teeth, and the regimental commander calls him in, and they have a powwow with the regimental commander, a colonel by the name of Fred Tollison, and they called in the regimental XO because he was a cold weather expert in the Marine Corps by the name of Lieutenant Colonel John Ripley. And you remember John Ripley, all our Marines do, from Ripley at the bridge for blowing the bridge in Dong Ha in 1972.
Yeah.
Well, now in 1980, John Ripley is the executive officer of the 6th Marine Regiment.
Okay.
But as a captain, he had been with the Royal Marine Commandos and had wintered over. So they huddled the lieutenant colonel, the colonel, the major, and they called in the S4, and I can only remember his name because he was a heavy barrel in the Marine Corps. The heavy barrel is the scuttlebutt name for distinguished marksmen with those big badges on their chest.
Yeah.
And he and his brother actually both were heavy barrels. His name was Norm Chandler. And Norm Chandler was a major, and it was the official S4 of the 6th Marine Regiment, but his real secondary job was to shoot for the Camp Lejeune 2nd Division rifle team, and being a 4 of a regiment that hardly ever went anywhere, he could shoot first.
Right.
So the first thing that happens in the meeting is Chandler says, I got to go to the national matches and I got to prepare. I can't be the S4 of 36 Mao. It's in the Marine Corps' interest for me to keep shooting. So they all say, right. Then the cold weather guy, Ripley, says, it's going to be a bitch, but you got to leave somebody back here in the 6th Marines, and I'm the XO, so I'll stay back. So the colonel says, well, Verkaderen, I guess it's you and me going, and we got to load these ships out. How are we going to get smart on the exercise and get the Mew there? And Verkaderen, with his big mouth, says, well, you know, sir, if you recall, and of course he didn't, Major Fallon down there is the executive officer of 1-6. He used to be the S3, and he went to all 3 training conferences, so he knows all the Norwegians and the Royal Marines. We should fly him up there and let him negotiate a bigger head count and all the Navy side, because we're now bringing a Mao, not a fly-in unit. And Ripley and Tollison says, Dick, you're right. And they said, well, what if we take him and make him the S4 of the Mao? And Dick goes, you should really do that. And so they said, okay. So the meeting breaks up, and Verkaderen goes down to the 3 shop and calls me and says, hey, you're now the Mao S4. I said, no, I'm not. I don't even know what you're talking about. I hadn't even heard about this. I said, I'm getting ready to go to Norway. He says, you pack your bags. You're going to Norway by yourself next week. As the 46 Mao S4, you're on the team. So I hung up and I went and saw the battalion commander, and he said, this will not stand. And he grabs his piss cutter, and the battalion streets ran perpendicular to River Road.
Right. Yeah.
The regimental headquarters sits on River Road, has a nice view of the river. So he smokes down the battalion street in the back door, which is only for commanders, in to see Ripley, his peer. And Ripley says, don't even start. Go around the corner and go to the colonel's office. And then the colonel yelled for Ripley to get in there. And of course, the battalion commander sounded off in a loud voice. And after he was out of air, the colonel said, the decision's non-negotiable. As of this minute, Fallon's the S4. You walk back there and tell him to report down here to me. And so Ripley said, so the colonel says, well, this is how we do Marine officer planning, right? So the commander says, well, I need an XO. And so Ripley says, well, the XO of 3rd Battalion's not doing anything because they got grass cutting detail this month. We'll transfer Bob Essink, the big Grinch, 6'4". We call him the big Grinch because he's so big. He'll just get transferred over to 1-6. He can be the XO. And so he transferred Essex that day. We had a handshake turnover. I went down there and they said, get on a plane and go negotiate for the Mao. So I go up and come back, do all that. And BLT 16 was going to be the GCE. They had been through some training. They gave us a helicopter squadron, had not been through any cold weather training, out of New River. And they gave an LPH, landing platform helo. And so it was pretty easy. The 4 shop had to do the embarkation. We embarked the squadron on the LPH. We embarked the headquarters on the LPH because that's where the Commodore was going to be.
Okay.
Well, now it's the StuffX. It's the Commodore staff, the Mao staff, the squadron staff, the whole squadron. There's no more room. And the Navy says no more shipping. You got a 1-ship Mao. Well, where are you going to put the Amtraks, the engineers, the other 2 rifle, blah, blah, blah. So we decided we would fly. We would keep all the airlift. We could still fly all the Marines. Where do we get the equipment? Dial 1-800, good idea. I said to Colonel Tollison, who secondary duty he was a comptroller. He was a grunt in Vietnam, became a comptroller. I said, hey, sir, you're a comptroller. Let's just rent a Ro-Ro. He goes, what's a Ro-Ro there, Fallon? I said, roll on, roll off. R-O-R-O. For those of you who are counting the number of acronyms per session here, Ro-Ro is a civilian acronym. And I said, all it takes is some of St. Lance dollars. He goes, oh, second chest. He said, how am I going to get that? I said, well, you and I and the major here, they got us into it. Let's drive up to Norfolk and go see the force commander. Tell him we need a Ro-Ro. He's the guy who got us in. Okay, get the appointment for the next day. The major does that. We get the driver in the colonel's sedan. 0400 launch from Camp Lejeune. Highway 17 north.
Yeah.
Through the dismal swamp, we're going to Norfolk. So we got an 11 o'clock appointment with the 3-star. We go upstairs to the second story, old World War II white clapboard building, and we go in, and he's a gentleman, and sit down. Really glad you're here to talk 36 Mao, and glad you guys are going. I got all the faith in you, and here's coffee. And finally, I raised my hand. I said, hey, sir, we got work to do, and we have an issue we need you to fix. And boy, he just turned on a dime and said, oh, okay. What do I need to help you? I said, and the colonel's going like this. I said, "Sir, we want the Navy to rent a ro-ro so we can take our equipment because we only got one ship."
Yeah.
He goes, "Brilliant. You guys drink your coffee and wait here." So you could come in through his double door,
Yeah.
and the aide and the adjutant, or he had a fire door on this that his own ladder well down, and he'd walk across the grass quarterdeck to his counterpart, who was a Navy 4-star. He was a Marine 3-star.
Yeah.
He goes in and says, "Here's what we need. It's for this is for the nation, the northern flank. We want a ro-ro. It's pretty easy." I had given him the figure 300,000. It was a total wag. He upped it to 500,000 in his brain walking across. He wagged it to the 4-star. The 4-star said, "This is operational. Hits today. We'll do it."
Nice.
So we got a ro-ro and a LPH.
Wow.
So the Norwegians had helped us build a tent camp with the Korean tents, with a mess hall in canvas for the battalion messmen. But the camp at Setamone, North Norway, a village, they had to plow 20 feet of snow. So we were like in a bowl, but it was a snow bowl, but it knocked the wind down.
Oh, right.
We were capped at the original number that we could have ashore, because this is the Arctic and we couldn't protect them from the Arctic weather, which meant that the Navy Command, the Squadron Command, and the 36 Mao Command, those poor children had to do the exercise from the LPH. Oh my goodness. They got to go to the chief's mess and drink hot coffee. They got to eat in the admiral's mess. And once a day, the colonel and his S3 would fly ashore in their Huey and land in one place and get off. You could only be outside for 20 minutes. They would do a 20-minute inspection, get back on the Huey, fly back to the ship, and, well, we did our inspection. Meanwhile, the battalion commander, it was probably better that way. The battalion commander got to run his own exercise.
Wow.
So we're going to North Norway. Circle the wagons and get up there. So I become the OIC of the advanced party, because I cut the deals, and the Mao 4, and the Mao representative ashore. So no cabin for Watash on the boat. You're ashore in a tent.
It was awful nice of them.
Yeah, with the BLT that doesn't like me because I left them.
Yeah.
Anyway, when you're in North Norway, as we established with Captain Bruce Gumbars, you have to serve 6,000 to 10,000 calories a day.
Right.
You have to serve your Marines 4 meals a day, plus hot wets 24/7. So this is my second education in BDFA. Okay, you should remember it from a few acronyms and episodes ago.
Yeah.
Basic daily food allowance. The BDFA for every Marine says the food services officer in Watash can spend $4.25 a day buying stuff to feed each of his Marines.
Okay.
You can send a message to Headquarters Marine Corps to the LDO Limited Duty Officer,
Right.
Food Services God of the Marine Corps, Lieutenant Colonel, and request an Arctic supplement. Hey, we did that, and we got 79 more cents.
Nice.
But okay, it was nice. All the contracts for everything in Norway and North Norway had been sucked up by the Norwegian Army and the Royal Marines. Every cow in North Norway lives inside a barn. You can't buy milk in North Norway unless it's on contract from inside a barn. So
Wow.
everything you do, you pay exorbitant prices in the winter,
Mm-hmm.
or you import it. So us guys, the last 1,000 ashore of the game,
Mm-hmm.
we're paying big prices. So to prevent scurvy, not really scurvy, Marines don't get it today, but to have some fruit,
Mm-hmm.
I was importing oranges from Israel because I had leftover connection from my days in Israel, and we were bringing crates of oranges. We were flying them in.
Wow.
But we had fresh oranges
Uh-huh.
in the mess tent. So fresh fruit, good.
Wow.
Well, we got to get milk. So we're paying the Brits an exorbitant price for milk. And the first crisis we have is they're at the halfway point. Our BDFA is like $12 a Marine. It was supposed to be $4.50. And so they fly in one day for a private meeting in the Norwegian conference room in a building with me and the LDO lieutenant that was the battalion food services officer.
Okay.
And it's the colonel who's the old comptroller and the three, and they're saying, well, you got the good news is the bad news is you're at $12. The good news is you got 20 days to bring the price down.
Mm-hmm.
That was their plan. They had it charted out and all this stuff. You only have to drop it so much a day. And I said, you guys are smoking pot. You're 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 on the ship making charts. We're not cutting the BDFA because we got to put 10,000 calories per Marine in it.
Yeah.
You fucking relieve me. And oh, by the way, you're a comptroller. We'll figure this out later. It's just money. Forget about it. We're not doing it. And I looked at my friend, Ricardo, and I said, this is not cold weather training. This is Arctic exercise. We're in the Arctic. Go back and do your homework and get out of here. I had to yell at him. I had to yell at the major because I was a major. I couldn't yell at the colonel.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, while we're here, we're going to inspect the mess hall. So they go to the mess hall, and the food services officer, who was secondary duty, who was supposed to be working for me, that was on the boat, this warrant officer looks at the grease sump. So we had dug a grease sump outside the field kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
A grease sump is where you pour your grease when it's all done.
Right.
Well, in the United States and today, there's an environmental thing to do. We're in North Norway. It's winter. We cut a hole in the snow 6 feet deep. So we'll pour it in here. We'll just make it a grease block and we'll sell it to the farmer and his cows can lick the grease. Not a big deal. We're going to make money on this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He says it doesn't meet the sanitation conditions. You have to close the mess hall. So he was working
mess
for
hall.
Yeah, he was telling me this. He's my warrant officer. So I basically said, get the fuck out of here. Go back to the boat. Stay there, and we'll never hear from you again. Okay. we go and we do the exercise.
Right.
20, 20, 20. 20 minutes out in the cold, 20.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get anybody frostbit. We had a few frost nips. A nip is a state that your fingers and toes get to before you get bit when it turns black.
Right.
But if you get them in a warm intent, we learned a lot. We wrote a lot of stuff up. Lots of other stories. We moved all the way up. We borrowed Norwegian BV-202s,
Okay.
which were small tractor vehicles that were light enough that they could go on top of the snow.
Mm-hmm.
And you could put a fire team, 4 Marines, and a 2-man M60 gun team in the back of one BV.
Wow.
And move.
Yeah.
So we went around and we went up to the Russian border, the Soviet Union. looked over, had the public affairs officer, Captain Dale Dye, a name people should recognize from Hollywood. He's made his fortune as a public affairs guy doing second career telling actors how to be Marines.
Yeah.
He took a bunch of pictures. He could only stay out for 15 minutes. He gets back in the tent. We go back to Camp Lejeune. We fold down and turn in all the equipment for 36 Mao. Verkaderen writes up, he could write this report that you'd think that we had defeated the Soviet Union. We just went up and looked at them. But, and we got everything turned in and accounted for, blah, 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 except there was an outstanding message. The little warrant officer went back and sent a message to the LDO, Lieutenant Colonel, Headquarters Marine Corps, that the 36 Mao was going to end up above BDFA. So when we were doing the closeout, you have to pay your bills. 36 Mao did not have the money.
Right.
Because Maos don't have a budget to start with.
Right.
They get given money for an exercise. 6 Marines has got no money. So Colonel Tollison, he's got his hat in his hand, dragging me along. Now that everybody's been returned to their original unit, there's only 2 people left in the Mao, the colonel and me.
Okay.
So we drive up and see General Dolph Swank, 3-star, pitch the case. We need money. He pulls in his G4 colonel and says, what do you think? G4 colonel says, sir, you don't have the money. It's not in your budget. We're well past half year. We're coming into the summer. We're going to have to go to Headquarters Marine Corps and ask for them to cover it. And he goes, okay, write up a message and do all that. So you write up the message, they do all that. Meanwhile, he says, you better open an investigation into why the BDFA was so big. And the colonel says, okay, I'll do that. And that's good because the colonel can keep some control over it. So we come back to Camp Lejeune. Colonel gives the investigation to Ripley. Ripley's pissed off. He's a lieutenant colonel. He's bigger than me. He says, why do I get stuck doing it? Because you messed up. So Ripley was a gentleman and honest Marine. We had a few cups of coffee, and then we went out to a place in Jacksonville that all senior non-commissioned officer Marines know, called Northwoods Tavern. And in Northwoods Tavern, I explained to good Colonel Ripley what really went down. He was an Arctic guy. He got it. He wrote up the investigation. His conclusion was Headquarters Marine Corps should pay. The colonel, of course, endorsed it and sent it back to the 3-star, who endorsed it and sent it to Headquarters Marine Corps, who went into the same food services officer, who was all pissed off, and it was going to come out of his budget. So he's tap dancing. All this takes 2 months. So where do I live? They got a little outbuilding that they keep the police detail. The 6th Marine Regiment, where they kept all the lawnmowers. And the police sergeant of the 6th Marine Regiment, the Marine sergeant, they said, that's your office, Fallon. Hang another sign there. So it said 6th Marine Police Shed, 2 hooks. Then it said 36 Mao. And I had a field desk in there, and a police sergeant and I shared the phone for 2 months. It was a good 2 months. I got to PT a lot and be with my family, which was all good.
Yeah.
The colonel and I, so Headquarters Marine Corps sends a message, we're not going to pay to the 3-star. So the colonel and I get back in the car, and we're driving back up through the Dismal Swamp, and we go see the general again. And we were literally sitting in the general's office when the adjutant comes in and says, "Sir, I know you're having coffee with Colonel Tollison, um, but the Brigadier General's list just arrived, and I thought you two senior gentlemen would want to see it." And in those days, it came by naval message, and it
Right.
was tradition that the senior generals got to tell the new generals, if it wasn't the commandant himself, the
Mm-hmm.
three-star who got picked. They bring the list in. In those days, the Marine Corps made about 8 brigadier generals a year.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it was 4 ground officers and 4 aviators. This year it was 4 ground officers and 4 aviators. 3 of the ground officers were infantry. 1 was supply. Holy moly, there's only 1 supply, 1 star in the whole Marine Corps. You only get a new one like once every 6 years. Well, it was the G4 of FMF Land. That colonel, who was the 3 stars general that day,
Yeah.
said, he called him in. He said, "I got good news and I got good news. You're selected for 1 star. Congratulations. We're all going to the club." Now, re-endorse this package on BDFA from FMF Land and sign it by direction from yourself back to Headquarters Marine Corps, where it'll go to that food services officer, who in 30 days, you're going to be his boss and make all this shit go away. Everybody goes, "Brr, brr." Off to the club we go with the new one, with the new selected 1 star, the 3 star, and I'm saved by a promotion on what should have been common sense, that we pay for food for our Marines when we're in
Yeah.
Arctic warfare.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that covered October, November, December, and January. Hey, we made it to January and April maybe of '81. How's that?
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's a good story too.
Well, we try to teach as we go along. I'm looking down at my notes to make sure I just didn't leave a teaching point off here. I don't think I did, but I never know. I could go on and talk about the other cold weather exercise. It took the Marine Corps about 5 years or
Mm-hmm.
6 years to evolve to an Arctic training schedule, and
Mm-hmm.
led by the 2nd Marines, to their credit. New equipment, new skis,
Mm-hmm.
new boots for the Marines in cold weather, new clothing.
Yeah.
I did a little homework, so give the historians there some statistics they can double check
Okay.
on everybody knows Napoleon went to Moscow
Mm-hmm.
and was defeated. That was his big
Right.
defeat. And most historians know it wasn't the Soviets that defeated him. The Soviets just kept backing up, taking lots of casualties. It was cold weather and an Arctic winter.
Right.
Napoleon left with 385,000 troops in the French legions that went with him on the foot march from Germany towards Moscow. Napoleon suffered 250,000 of the
Wow.
385,000 cold weather injuries where the man had to stop, non-combatant, or death. And of course, they just left him at the side of the road. So when he got there, he's down to about 130,000 functioning, and he's got to have those guys in logistics and ammo and all that. So he's
Mm-hmm.
really down to 30 or 40,000 rifleman, and of course he
Wow.
loses. You would think the German army would learn from Napoleon.
Yeah.
When Hitler attacked, it was the winter of 41 and 42.
Mm-hmm.
Hitler had a treaty, by the way, with Stalin.
Mm-hmm.
He broke it and attacked. In 3 months, he attacked Moscow. And guess what? He didn't take it. Why? In 3 months, the German army suffered 100,000 cold weather casualties, of which
Wow.
15,000 were amputations. So saw your leg or your arm off and throw it to the side of the road, turn around and walk the other direction.
Wow.
Arctic weather, there's 3 rules the Marine Corps teaches, all service teach. Survive, move and shelter, survive, move and shelter, then fight,
Mm-hmm.
then fight. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. You're only ever fighting with 1/3 of your combat force.
Right.
If
That
you
makes
do
sense.
that, and your enemy does not, the Arctic weather will defeat your enemy. Just keep moving around and use
Yeah.
maneuver warfare. Okay, I
Wow.
covered my point. I'm sitting in the shed there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna catch my breath and take a sip of this water and see if you got any questions before we flip the page.
I don't know. I might have just cut out there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. No, I find that absolutely fascinating. When you talk about Napoleon and Hitler going into Russia like that, we're still well, I guess we have learned a little bit since then. We're doing cold weather stuff thanks to you and all of your efforts. But they're still going up to Norway and doing these exercises, if I'm not mistaken.
They sure are. And the big lesson there is there are 2 types of training. There's cold weather training. We do that at Bridgeport.
Right.
Might get down to 0 degree. There's Arctic training. You do Arctic training above the Arctic Circle or
Mm-hmm.
down below the uh, Antarctic. There
Right.
will be fighting in the Arctic in the next global war. The submarines are already both sides underwater all the way
Mm-hmm.
through, back and forth. North Norway is still a flank of NATO. NATO has still got all the relevance today as demonstrated by the Ukraine fight, but
Mm-hmm.
even more demonstrated on why it's such an important alliance at a strategic level. Why would the countries of Sweden and Finland join NATO? Just ask yourself, oh, why? Well, maybe they wanted common protection against Putin. So,
Yeah.
yeah, AJ, just as you said, Arctic training is part of the Marine Corps syllabus today.
Mm-hmm.
We've got way better equipment. I think we have better knowledge, and I would defer to today's Marines on how many units we could get out of Dodge quickly on it. Usually you have to ramp up,
Yeah.
to get a cold weather or an Arctic unit ramped up. So we went from Key West, Florida to Tromsø and Bardufoss, Norway. I'm in the forest shop cutting grass and doing PT every morning at Camp Lejeune. And the Marine Corps monitor calls me and says, hey, got some good news for you. Somebody must have backed out. We got a school seat to go to Command and Staff College if you can leave and take, only 10 days leave and get up here. I said, well, I got to get released from the 36 mile. He said, the scuttlebutt at headquarters Marine Corps that's going to happen today. So the new 1-star got up there and did his thing. I got a set of orders to go to Quantico, Virginia to Command and Staff College.
Very nice. Now, and that when you went to Command and Staff College, that's for a master's degree?
No, in those days they didn't have a added master's. Today
Okay.
they've affiliated, and you can get an added master's. In those days, you just went and you got to meet some of your peers, and they taught the operational level of warfare, the
Mm-hmm.
schools, the amphibious warfare school, which is the expeditionary warfare school today,
Mm-hmm.
is supposed to turn out great captains for company commanders and teach you how to be a battalion staff officer. The next rank up. Command and Staff College is supposed to turn out future battalion commanders, teach you how to work on a regimental and division staff,
Right.
to look at warfare that way. Uh, Command and Staff College. I would tell you in my day, not very much on the command side, a lot on the staff side,
Mm.
which meant a lot of paperwork. Dumbbell English, of course, I qualified back into dumbbell English, no problem. So we move, and students at Quantico in those days, I still think today mainly, if you're coming for a short tour, command and staff's 9 months,
Mm-hmm.
EWS is 9 months. They try to hold a block of housing units so you get base housing, so you don't have to go
Nice.
through renting for less than a year and all that.
Right.
So we checked in and went to base housing, and they said, "Do you know where the letter departments are?" And usually people say no. I said yes. And she said, "You're a major, you get to look at two and pick which one." I said, "What are the two letters? You don't want to drive up and look at them?" I said, "No." She said, "Quarters K and quarters A." I said, "What are the numbers?" And she said, "K1 or A6." I said, "We'll take K1." And she looks at me and she says, "What?" So the letter departments are up on the ridgeline and overlooks the main side Quantico.
Right.
Red brick built at the end of the Depression. There's 6 apartments in a common stairwell,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the building has a basement with a single car garage and a gang washroom for washers and dryers.
Okay.
There are 2 apartments on each side of the common foyer. So you step through a door, and apartment 1 is on the right and apartment 2 is on the left. And
Okay.
you walk marble stairs to the 2nd floor and marble stairs to the 3rd floor.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are 6 families that live there. Some live there for 3 years, some for 9 months. I knew it was 9 months. I knew first floor was better for groceries, better for little kids,
Yeah.
faster to the car. And I had already lived in K6 when I was a boy.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
said, I'll stay with K. I know how to get to K. I'll live in K1 this time.
Yeah.
And so got a nice apartment in K1. Went upstairs. The 4th floor is the maid's room. So though you couldn't take the front hallway, it stopped at 3. The back hall had stairs to the garage down
Mm-hmm.
and stairs to the 4th floor up. That was a center hallway, and there were 6 maids' rooms. That was a one dormer room that looked out to the front.
Mm-hmm.
And down the hall on each side was a head. So there was one head on the right, one head on the left.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a buzzer in there where you could ring the buzzer from the kitchen and call the maid.
Okay.
Well, of course, we didn't have maids then. So generally, the oldest teenager lived up there, or the officer turned it into a study.
Oh,
And
I
since I
see.
was a
Yeah.
student, I turned that into my study. And I would go up there and pull out my chair and put my face on my desk and take a nap. And when the buzzer rang, I would come downstairs and eat dinner.
Yeah.
Uh, had a good year. Made great friends at Command and Staff College. My goal going in was to, you know, help my career. By now, I figured I'm going to make it a career.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I knew I couldn't be an academic star, and I knew I couldn't be an English star. So I guess I was there on an athletic scholarship. So I went out for every single intramural team. And so
Okay.
each of the schools, faculty and students together
Mm-hmm.
in every sport in those days at Quantico,
Right.
formed a team, played in the base league. So I think I played in 6 sports, volunteered. If you volunteer, you're on the team. I'm pretty good in baseball, so played there, pretty good in softball, horrible in basketball, got short white man's disease, sat on the bench, but
Okay. Yeah.
little did I know that the faculty picked the best athlete not on ability, but basically on leadership and participation. So
Mm.
I won the athletic award at Command and Staff College. I didn't start at quarterback at any college like some of my former battalion commanders.
Yeah.
Not really a big jock. I was in great shape and could max the PFT.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, that's 9 months. How about that? We did 9 months in 5 minutes.
Yeah. That was pretty good.
Any questions on that?
uh, now, when you said every sport, it's you did football as well. Did they have a team
No,
football team?
they had 8-man flag football
Oh, okay.
intramural.
Got it. Okay.
It was it was the intramural sports, not the big Marine Corps sports.
Oh, okay. I
So
see what
so
you're saying. Yeah.
you played the staff and the students of the amphibious warfare school, the captains played the
Right.
majors, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That always turned into a blood match, no matter what sport it was. But so, and different leagues, there was a bowling league,
Mm-hmm.
there was a badminton league, basketball. They held a track meet, so a spring
Wow.
spring track meet,
Mm-hmm.
so
Okay.
to do stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. 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 And now at this point, it was you, your wife. Is that right? And then did you have kids as well?
we got one daughter at this time.
One daughter at this time. Okay.
Yep,
All right.
Charlotte. Her name is.
Charlotte.
Well, let me back up.
Okay.
I I mistakenly gave birth to her 2 tours too soon. No, it's just the
Oh,
two
okay.
of us.
Okay.
It's
Just the
just
two of you.
it's yeah. Sorry, Charlotte, when you're watching this. I was trying to make Hey, I was trying to make you older. I guess that's a mistake too. Um,
Oh my gosh.
all
That's
right.
funny.
So uh, the monitors come as a flock down to Quantico
Right.
to meet with the captains and the majors to start talking about where you go next.
Mm-hmm.
They come down in the fall and ask you, fill out your dream sheet, 3 places where you dream to go. And I always fill out 1st Marine Division, 1st Marine Division, Camp Pendleton.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever gets their dream sheet. For 10 years, I fill out a Y. I gave up filling that out, never got to it. Um, they come down in the spring uh, to tighten it up. And with about a month to go, uh, they they called me in and they said uh, they called about 20 of us in, and they said the director of MR is coming down tomorrow, and you 20 Marines are going to meet with him. the director of MR, manpower recruiting, MR director.
Yeah.
1 star. Recruiting had been having a bad time.
Mm-hmm.
So the general still think it's Mr. General Barrow. He pulled a former recruiter who had been a colonel, who was the chief of staff of the 2nd Division. He promoted him to 1 star and came up and said, "You got to fix recruiting." And he said, the way to fix recruiting is to take the top 10% of Marine NCOs and send them to recruiting school and DI school. There needs to be an interview process, and only the cream of the crop can go to
Mm-hmm.
DI school or recruiting school. And you got to take the top 10% of the officers, send them recruiting duty. If you send marginal people out there, this is tough duty. So the commandant told the gentleman, his name was Fulham, Don Fulham, green light, you get to pick who you want. Well, Fulham knew that grunts were aggressive, and if you got selected for command and staff, that you had a good career path. So he just called the colonel and command and staff and said, "How many grunts you got?" He said 20. He said, "I want to see all 20. And 12 of them are going on recruiting duty in June, May or June."
Wow.
So we walk in. I'm Don Fulham. Any volunteers for recruiting? 0 for 20. He said, "Okay, I'm going to leave you a list of these 12 stations. You guys write down your first, second, and third choice, all 20 of you. One of my deputies coming back tomorrow. He'll collect it all. 12 of you are going on recruiting duty." So you write down 3 picks. You're shitting in your pants. You're calling buddies trying to find out how to pick. You do your
Mm-hmm.
picks. The next day, the lieutenant colonel comes down. They call a 20 in. Well, the lieutenant colonel is Lieutenant Colonel John Jumpin' Jewel, starting quarterback for Louisiana, that had been my 1-6 battalion commander.
Yeah.
And he says, "I'm going on recruiting duty from Headquarters Marine Corps Recruiting." He was escaping after 1 year. "I'm going to the 8th District in New Orleans, and that's a good deal. And you're coming to the 8th District with me, Fallon. So just look at 8th District choices and pick which one you want." So, I picked Recruiting Station Houston, which
Yeah.
meant I got Recruiting Station Houston.
Very nice.
And got a set of orders to Recruiting Station Houston. Was scared shitless. Got the orders in 1st of May or something.
Now, for recruit or for officers, recruiting can be a make it or break it type of situation, like when you're talking about career.
So the statistics for officers,
Mm-hmm.
see, the short answer to that question is yes. The medium answer for that question is the statistics for officers on recruiting duty is 15% get relieved. And that's a combination of poor morals and poor performance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 15% compared to less than 0.5% of officers being relieved in the rest of the Marine Corps. So
wow,
it is the deadliest place you can go.
right?
So it also is the hardest duty in the Marine Corps, harder than combat, day in, day out, because of the grind
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes the lack of the motivation. In combat, when somebody shoots at you, it's pretty easy to motivate yourself and your Marines.
Yeah.
recruiting duty, the motivation is all in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So I was scared. Houston at the time was ranked 49th in the nation out of 50 RSs, recruiting stations.
Wow.
You can't get much lower than that.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't performing. They were missing mission. They were failing. And I was going out, take over a failing station.
Mm-hmm.
I had a good friend who was in first recon with me, who's a peer, who had recruiting station Baltimore, Maryland at the time.
Right.
His name was Casey Roberts. And Casey was in the recruiting command. They give an award at the end of the year to stations called Superior Achiever. And different, you have to make all your numbers. Some
Mm-hmm.
years it's 10 stations. Some years it's 15. You have to make all your numbers in all your categories.
Right.
So he was the superior achiever in Artist Baltimore. So I called him up and I said, I got to come see you. I'm going on recruiting duty. And, he could have said, no, I'm too busy. He said, drive to Baltimore, come see me. So I went in, had a 3-hour meeting. And he basically said, look, this is leadership. You know how to
Mm-hmm.
lead. These are Marines. He said, so first be a leader. He said, second, there's a system. A guy named McMillan, who was the brigadier general before Don Fulham, built what was called systematic recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
And this is pre-computers and algorithms.
Right.
It was based on card boxes. It was based on statistics and demographics. And each recruiter had to have demographic population of high school seniors to be successful.
Right.
And he got that by a selection of high schools that he owned.
Mm-hmm.
So the theory was you use the system, did hard work, visited your high schools, interviewed every one of your 4,000 high school seniors, you, recruiting sergeant, could be successful.
Right.
You have to learn that just because you got a no today and you got a no 50 times on the phone and 25 times to your face, it's not a bad day. And the Marine Corps and your wife don't hate you. So it's psychological warfare and leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So Casey gave me the philosophy. We went to Houston. I checked in. You check in about 3 or 4 days ahead of time. You only bring the recruiters in once a month. You can't afford to spend the time to take them off the street.
Right.
To bring them back to the recruiting station, because for some recruiter in Texas, that could be a 500-mile drive.
Yeah. Yeah, especially in Texas. Yeah.
So mainly once a month, generally, you bring all the recruiters in.
Mm-hmm.
You give them the good news and the bad news. It's always at the end of the month, start of the next month.
Mm-hmm.
So you do the recruiting station change of command. We did it at the recruiting station, which was in the post office on San Jacinto Street in downtown Houston.
Okay.
In old downtown Houston. And the post office building was a government building, and each of the armed services had offices there.
Mm-hmm.
And the Marine Corps had their recruiting station there on the 3rd floor. And we actually had a substation down on the 1st floor with a glass window out to the street.
Right.
And we had a classroom, and we did the change of command in the classroom. And the district director and his operations officer
Mm-hmm.
flew in from New Orleans to the little airport, Houston Houston Hobby. So the tradition was the old commander drove out to Houston Hobby, met him at the plane, had the government vehicle plane side, way before TSA security. Everybody's in their alpha uniform, sweating. And the old guy drives them to the change of command. You do the change of command and pass the flag in front of the Marines that just stand up from their seats. The director says, the Marine Corps loves you, but you got to make mission next year and next month and next day. And then it's over. And the Marines are dismissed. It's Friday. It's the end of the month. And the tradition was the new guy drive the director and his OPSO back to Houston Hobby. There's a moral to this story. We'll get there.
All right.
So I get to drive back to Houston Hobby. I had done a reconnaissance, learned how to drive in traffic. I get him back there. The director is a guy named Jarv Lynch. He retired as a 2-star. He was a good college football player. His operations officer was Jumpin' John Jewell. So I'm standing plain side, and I salute, say goodbye, sir, sir. Lynch turns around, takes an envelope out, hands me the envelope. Have a good drive back to the station, Mike. Have a good flight to New Orleans. They go up. I watch the plane leave. I pull off to the side there, still at the airport. Open the letter, read it. From the CO of the 8th Marine Corps District to the CO Recruiting Station, Houston. Subject, probation. Line 1. Effective today, you're on 3 months probation. Line 2. If you don't make mission, line 3, you're fired. In 3 months. I said, ooh, yeah, ooh. True story. So I go, I don't know what to do. So I fold it up. It's a government car. So my parking place was at the post office where my car was. I'm going to drive back there and get my car. So I said, well, I'll just go into my office. And, sometimes commanders leave notes to the next commander in the lower left-hand drawer. I'll just look at my office, read the letter again, think about it. Well, I go in there and everybody's gone except the Sergeant Major. Sergeant Major Gray.
Okay.
And he goes, hey, sir, how's it going? I said, not very good. Hey, sir, you just got here. Why is it not going very good? 6'4". He's in dress blues.
Yeah.
And I go, take the letter out, hand it to him. He reads it. Yeah, sir, the station has missed mission for about a year. We got problems. I said, okay. I said, hey, Sergeant Major, what are we going to do? He said, sir, use that we word. I said, all right, hey, Sergeant Major. I believe in the big we. Got an issue here. He goes, well, he said, if you're willing to listen, we can turn it around. And I go, wait a minute. Hey, Sergeant Major, you drink beer? He goes, yes, sir. Okay. Do you have a bar? Yes, sir. Where is it? Next door. Next door to the post office? Yeah. Lock up. Let's go to the bar. In uniform, we go to the bar.
Okay.
It's typical downtown Houston bar. One door. It's a shotgun bar. No booze. Just a bar with stools.
Yeah.
Dark. You can't see nothing. The air conditioners sit on 60. There's nobody in there. We go to the middle of the bar. 2 stools. This long neck appears in front of the Sergeant Major. He doesn't say nothing. And the bartender says, what do you have, sir? And I said, the same as Sergeant Major. Long neck appears. So The sergeant major says, I said, what do we need to do? He says, sir, for a recruiter to succeed, he's got to have population.
Yeah.
He's got to have a telephone. This is the days before cell phones.
Right. Yeah.
And he's got to have a car, government car.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And then those are the tools.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, we have to train him and lead him. He's got to have the tools. He can make mission. It's pretty simple. I said, okay, what do we do? He said, sir, you can give the cars back to the recruiters. I got the cars? He said, yes, sir. In the lower right-hand desk drawer are the keys to all the cars. So these are GSA cars. GSA, another acronym, ladies, Government Services Administration. So Central Motor Pool, run by the feds for all the government agencies in Houston. RS Houston gets an allocation of 125 cars. They're all parked. I said, why is that? Well, the GSA director of the motor pool is a GS-14 civilian. Where's his office? Oh, he says on the first floor of the building here. And we had one too many fender benders, and he had the major down to his office and was chewing his ass. And I said, why is a GSA civilian calling a Marine major in and chewing his ass? That's out of bounds. Sergeant Major goes, we're going to get along great. And I said, well, what do we got to do to get in the cars? He says, well, you got to give me an order. I said, Sergeant Major, get another round of beer and give the cars back to the recruiters. So he points at the bartender and says, come on down here. He says, get another round of beer and get me the phone. It's a black dial-a-phone.
Yeah.
It's on a long 30-foot cable.
Mm-hmm.
It's only one for the bar. He goes down, gets it, gives it to the sergeant major. Sergeant major calls the number to the logistics NCO that's an A billet for the recruiting station. Staff sergeant says, leave home. I don't care if you've been drinking beer. In your jeans. Come to the office. Be here in a half hour. You got work. Picks it up. He calls the professional recruiter, the 8600 master gunnery sergeant at home, and says, come to my bar now. You got work. So those two come in. They're in civilian clothes. I buy those two a beer, meet them again. And the sergeant major also called the S1, who was the staff sergeant. He'd come in, and we had a phone tree.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For recall.
Mm-hmm.
So the sergeant major says to the two staff sergeants, go up to your offices, call the phone tree. You two guys stay in the offices Saturday and Sunday all day long. Not tonight, but Saturday and Sunday. All the recruiters got to have mama drive them down here and pick up their car, and they can expense POV mileage for mama's trip. They get their car back, and they got to be in the office, go to work Monday morning. You guys do the phone tree. Off they go, and you give out the keys. So he says, okay, by Monday, everybody will have their cars. So he looks at the recruiting instructor. The recruiting instructor had been in Houston about 12 years. He's Hispanic background. Houston.
Yeah.
Third of the population then was, I'm going, whoa, wonderful. I'm looking at Sergeant Major Gray. You know, if you turn the lights off, I can't see him. Sergeant Major Gray is black as the ace of spades.
Yeah.
I'm going, Houston, it's a black city. I'm going, we got the demographics here. And so Sergeant Major goes, okay, here's what we do. He said, Master Guns, you got the roster of the Marines. He said, yep. These are the production Marines. He takes
Mm-hmm.
it out. He takes a ruler and he divides it into thirds. And he says, okay, at the start of every month, we'll divide the roster that's number one to last from the best performer to the worst performer. And the top third, Major, you get the top third. And wherever they are, you go see them. You get in your car, you go drive to them, and sir, you just stroke them. And you stroke the wife. And you just be nice to them.
Yeah.
All I got to do? Yeah. And other good leadership things. I said, okay. I said, who gets the bottom third, Sergeant Major? Sergeant Major says, I do. I get in my car and I go see the bottom third, and they don't want to see me 2 months in a row.
Makes
And
sense.
I said, what happens to the middle third? And the Sergeant Major squeals this thing and he goes, recruiting instructor, naming billet? What will you do with the middle third? And, so the recruiting instructor launches, says, if we can take the middle third and have each of them write one more contract than they did last month, that's 33 contracts. And we go from 0 So the goal is to move everybody, one, but through training, we give specialized training to the middle third. So I got a group, we'll analyze them, they'll come to classroom training. Group will do telephone training. So I teach in groups for the middle third for the whole month. And next month we'll do the same thing. And some dudes will hover in the middle third forever.
Yeah.
Some dudes will break out and go to the top third. A couple will drop down. Sergeant Major will yell at them. They'll want to go back up. But the goal, so when I got there, the bottom third, 30 recruiters, were all donuts. 30
Whoa.
recruiters was zeros.
Wow.
9 months later, 9 months, the bottom third, no donuts. The bottom third is just one recruit. The mission was 3 a month then for us.
Right.
So make mission, go fishing.
Mm-hmm.
We went from last in the nation to number one in 9 months.
Wow.
Sat at number one for the next 2.5 years.
Well, you had it down.
Number one in the country.
Wow.
I punted it in the bleachers in the third year. There's a thing in recruiting called FMAM. Yes, that's an acronym. FFMA or AM. It stands for the months of February, March, April, and May. So it's FMAM. FMAM.
Okay.
FMAM is the bottom trough of the year when it's
Mm-hmm.
the hardest to recruit.
Right.
Now, if you can recruit through FMAM, you can make it. In my third year, we rolled into FMAM and we punted it. We did not miss ship. You get 2 missions. Ship is sending them to boot camp.
Right.
But we missed mission, replenishing the DEP, another acronym, delayed entry
Mm-hmm.
program, with new guys. So if you ship 100, you got to put 100 in. You really should put 120 in because you're going to have leakage out of the DEP.
Mm-hmm.
And I blew it. I blew it at the monthly all hands meeting where I give out awards, plaques, sabers, K-bars, certificates, promotions. I was tired of giving out awards, so I just chewed everybody's ass. Well, guess what? We missed in February. We missed in March.
Oof.
Well, The colonel called me. He didn't chew me on. In February, he chewed me on the phone. In March, he called me. He didn't chew me on the phone. He just said, "Get on a plane and fly to New Orleans. Come see me." Oh.
Whoopsie.
I went and told the sergeant major, and sergeant major said, "Hey, no sweat. We had a 2-month hiccup. Now, if you will get your ego back in check, Major, go over and tell the colonel that we'll be number 1 next month. You go back to taking the top third, and the RI and myself will pull out all our stops." And I went over and tap danced on the colonel's rug, said that we'd be number 1 in the district, and at least in the top 2 or 3 in the nation the next month. The colonel said, "Okay." The lieutenant colonel also said, "You don't have the numbers to do that. I've looked at the system." And the colonel said, "Fine, you made your point. Major, you made your point. Drive back to the airport." In those days, there was a Southwest Airlines flew a 1-hour shuttle between New Orleans and Houston, because New Orleans had a lot of energy companies and a lot of gas companies, a lot of Louisiana gas and oil companies, and of course, all the refineries and the big boys.
Right.
Big boys in gas and oil live in Houston. We went back. I ate crow. Sergeant Major Gray, Master Gunnery Sergeant Hernandez, they both stayed with me for 39 months, and into the guy who took my place. They called Gray, and they said to Gray, they said, "We want to move you back to the," he was a grunt. His wife was teaching school in Harris County. His kids were in high school. Station was banging on all cylinders. He told Sergeant Major Marine Corps, "Look, I'll resign, or you can leave me in Houston." Well, that solves the problem for the Sergeant Major Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Because usually rookie sergeant majors sort of get sent out on recruiting duty.
Right.
Especially if they had been either a drill instructor or a recruiter, either one, because once you become mature in drill instructor, you recognize that quality in is quality out.
Right.
And there is a lot of data to support that today in the Marine Corps. And we started it, we weren't first, but we did it in Houston. We tracked every recruit with every recruiter's social security number. So then when the kid attrited or graduated, I had a recruiter that had a 5.0 average of putting 5 people in every month, winning all these awards. But if he attrited 2 a month to the Marine Corps, he was a 3.0 guy.
Right.
I'm giving him all these awards. If I had a 4.0 guy who never lost anybody or lost one guy a year, like to a medical broken leg, he's much better to the Marine Corps, and he ought to be the superstar recruiter, not the best salesman.
Right.
So there is a yin and a yang. Now we've attached to every recruit the senior and the 2 juniors' social security numbers. So over time, we can track the senior's attrition rate as a senior. Big data.
Yeah.
Well, if you get a senior that teaches and leads, brings recruit along and graduates, and his attrition rate is 5%, and you have a senior who's a screamer, all DIs have to scream.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
is an asshole, and his attrition rate's 25%, who's better for the Marine Corps? So we've come a long way in big data. It's more sophisticated. Our recruits are better today, but still, recruiting is hardest job in the Marine Corps. I'm in my last year recruiting,
Mm-hmm.
and I messed up in February and March.
Right.
Somewhere along there, January or February, the promotion list for lieutenant colonel comes out,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm passed over, which means you're in zone. For those people don't know, but I was in zone for the first time to come to bat, and I did not get selected.
Right.
Well, I did not even know I was in zone, which is bad on me. Then I said, man, how can the number one recruiter get passed over? I told myself I was going to keep working. I might have let down and got angry for 2 months.
Yeah.
This is with 35 years of reflection. I put my pack back on and got back on it. The general in charge of Marine Corps Recruit Depot,
Mm-hmm.
San Diego at the time, called me about a week after it happened. His name was Major General at the time, Tony Anthony Lukeman. He retired as a Lieutenant General Anthony Lukeman. And so we have to say Lieutenant General Anthony Lukeman Sr.
Right.
because there's now a Major General Anthony Lukeman
Mm-hmm.
Jr. who's now retired, who was
Mm-hmm.
his son.
Right.
The senior calls me and says, I don't know what happened, but obviously, and General Lukeman was a manpower guy, which
Mm-hmm.
means he spent a lot of time in the manpower department headquarters.
Right.
He said, the board made a mistake, and I will take care of you. Hey, you just got to trust me. I had another year to do on recruiting duty. He says, put your pack back on and go to work. I said, yes, sir.
Right.
I got it. So I did that. The next year, I was selected for lieutenant colonel, and so I am time to get my orders. And a chief of staff from Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego,
Mm-hmm.
calls me up and says, where do you want to go? The general said he's going to take care of you. I said, 1st Marine Division.
Yeah.
I'm a selected lieutenant colonel. He says, if you go there as a selected lieutenant colonel, you're going to get a staff job, be a lieutenant colonel staff job. You're going to sit around. You won't get frocked. You'll throw your timing off. You shouldn't do that. I want to go to the 1st Marine Division. General said I get what I want. Wah, 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 wah. I want to go to the 1st Marine Division. Okay, I'll tell the general. He tells the general. He calls back up and says, you're not going to the 1st Division. So I said, okay, Colonel, where am I going? He says, you're coming to MCRD San Diego.
Nice.
Well, I said, the last time I looked, there were 5 battalions there.
Uh-huh.
2 of the 5 battalions are commanded by colonels.
Right.
The regiment's commanded by colonels. There's 6 battalions. And the 4 battalions inside the recruit training regiment are commanded by lieutenant colonels.
Right.
And there are 19 lieutenant colonels assigned to the depot. So I'm coming in as selected junior number 20.
Yeah.
I'm going to be counting jocks and socks. He said, yep, you might be, but that's where you're coming. So, okay, hang up. Said, okay, going to MCRD San Diego, called a few guys. They all said, well, San Diego's a nice place to live. Spend a lot of time with your family. You get back into swimming. You go to the beach.
Yeah.
And about About 2 weeks later, the chief of staff calls me up and says, "When's the change of command?" I said, "It's scheduled for Friday." He said, "Okay. Normally on recruiting duty, you've been up 39 months, you're wore out."
Yeah.
I had approved 30 days leave and 3 days transit or whatever it was.
Right.
Had this big trip planned. He says, "The general wants you here Monday morning." I'm giving a flag up Friday. Monday morning.
Oh
Okay.
my God.
Okay. So I told the family, well, I'll go check in, see what they want, and I'll check out and go on leave.
Yeah.
And we got to look for a house anyway. There's no quarters
Mm-hmm.
for anybody at MCRD San Diego except the general and 5 colonels.
Yeah.
Below that, there's no quarters. You live in town. Okay. Which means you commute a lot or you find a little shack at the beach.
Right.
So I drive over there Monday morning and I go in and I see the adjutant. And I said, "What's going on?" "I don't know. I'm in my alphas." Uh, I go in and I check into the chief. Chief says, "Where's your wife?" I said, "She's out in the car. I'm going to go on leave." "Well, maybe, maybe not. Can she come up here?" I said, "Well, I guess." So I said, "What's going to happen?" "Well, we're going to go into the general's office. The general's going to frock you to lieutenant colonel." And I'm going, "How can I be frocked to lieutenant colonel? You have to be in a command billet,
Yeah.
or you have to be in a outside the Marine Corps billet where the Marine Corps wants a lieutenant colonel to
Mm-hmm.
argue with the Air Force."
Right.
I go in there and general says hello, shakes hands. "How was the drive?" Blah, blah. "Fine, fine. Okay, you're frocked. Here's your orders. You go to RTR next week. On Monday, today. You take over support battalion,
Wow.
battalion commander." Say, "Woo, wonderful." Now there's 19 lieutenant colonels that are my peers that hate my guts because I am
Yeah.
the junior guy frocked. But guess what? That's okay. I'm going down to RTR to get support battalion. And the general said, "There's a reason you're going there." "Yes, sir." "You said you're going to take care of me." "No, I'm doing it for me and the Marine Corps." He said, "You understand attrition as a recruiter. I want you to learn attrition on the drill field, and your goal is to lower the attrition rate of MCRD on the drill field.
Yeah.
You go down to support battalion and you watch for 3 months. You come back here, we'll talk about how to lower attrition."
Wow.
Okie dokie. Go down to the regiment, meet the regimental commander, great guy. Go over to support battalion, had been gapped. Now there was a major there as acting. Okay guy. And we did a little change of command in the office. He said, "I want to follow everybody out. Support battalion has drill instructors that support the A, B, C's, and D's of the regiment
Mm-hmm.
that are not done in homeroom. So
Right.
recruit training homeroom for non-MCRD people. That's the series. The drill instructor owns the squad bay. He
Mm-hmm.
owns those recruits, but he moves them to the mess hall.
Mm-hmm.
He moves them to a classroom. He moves them to a PT field. At all those locations, they meet a specialized drill instructor
Right.
that teaches that class in history. So all the specialized dudes, drill instructors, belong to support battalion, along with all the problem recruits, which are in the physical fitness platoon,
Mm-hmm.
read fat body platoon, or the motivational platoon,
Yeah.
read I got a bad attitude, And the drill instructor, as punishment, dropped them from their platoon and series to support battalion, which means the friends you made the first 2 or 3 weeks in recruit training, they're moving on, but you're going to this isolated platoon of people that are just like you, and that's where the bad wheat went.
Yeah.
So General Lukeman took care of me. No doubt about it. He kept his word. He gave me a great challenge, and I got to command the support battalion for 2 full years,
Nice.
almost the entire time as a frocked lieutenant colonel, because I was at the very end there. And learned about recruit training and how it was the yang to recruiting yin. We started down this rabbit hole, and we're going to talk about how to improve attrition at MCRD.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to take my sip of my coffee here, catch my breath. I do want to talk about how you can improve attrition. The lesson is valid today as it was back then.
Yeah.
So wait one.
All right. Well, I will say, as a drill instructor myself, I saw drill instructors with the idea of attrition is the mission. We want to get recruits gone, right? We want them dropped. And my company, we said, hey, our goal is to keep every single recruit. And I think I was a senior for 2 cycles, and I dropped the first platoon. I dropped 1 recruit due to injury. And then the second cycle, I think I dropped 2 recruits, both due to injury. But those are the only recruits I dropped. And those were both 90-man platoons.
That's a stellar performance and just a demonstration of what can be done if the drill instructor flips the lid and says, my mission is to train these future Marines, and I have to screen out some recruiting mistakes. But I don't start with the assumption that the recruiter is shipping anybody who can breathe.
Right.
Those were the old days. And so to educate the non-Marines, to graduate from recruit training, the recruit has to do 3 things. He has to pass the academic standards. He has to qualify with the rifle. He has to pass a swim qualification test. That doesn't mean he can swim. That means he doesn't drown. And he has to be within the height and weight standards of the Marine Corps. So 4 doors. Attrition, which means you leave recruit training and you get a bus ticket or a free plane ticket home and you're discharged from the Marine Corps, can happen for 3 reasons: academic, medical, which can be you don't meet the height and weight standard, or you broke your hip and we got to send you home to rehab and you can rejoin once you can pass, or you're a psychotic and we've got the data to show you can't
not fit for service.
You can't make it.
Yeah.
All of those are tracked today, and when I started, by type. And I'll say if at recruit training you apply positive means, you can affect all of them. For the sake of time, we're just going to talk about swimming. The other thing you can do with recruit training is you can do any pilot program you want at one depot and leave the other control group, the East Coast depot.
Right.
And you can run it for 6 months a year. You got 30,000 recruits through both doing something controlled in both places. You can look at the stats and make a decision on whether the institution should change, maybe something that was sacrosanct. So the swim tank, Marine Corps word for swimming pool, belonged to support battalion. The swim tank administered the swim test. About 30% of the recruits failed the swim test when I got to support battalion on day one of taking it. You took the swim test then on the West Coast in week 3. You got remedial swim for a week, and if you didn't pass after 5 days of remedial swim, boom, you went to physical fitness platoon. So swim attrition was leading all other attrition.
Wow.
In the Western recruiting region for a variety of a lot of reasons. And a lot of reasons were the DIs that ran the swim deck in support battalion, my DIs, were lazy, and they allowed the DIs from the series into the swim tank and allowed them to basically be troop handlers and assistant instructors to make the test go faster. So they got off duty at noon instead of 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Which was the normal time they got off duty if they ran the test right. A Marine drill instructor getting off at 2:30 or 3, it's a luxury item. So there was a lot of yelling. The swim tank at San Diego was inside. It was humid. It was old. It was humid and no ventilation. It was a sweat pit. It was hotter inside than outside. It fogged up. A lot of noise reverberation, a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming, a lot of jump in, a lot of name calling. And people that have never been in the water can have a fear of water. It's human nature.
Yep.
And you put that type person in that type environment, they're going to fail the swim test.
Absolutely.
And you can map that demographically to the person's upbringing. And if the kid came as a white cracker from an Oklahoma farm out in the Dust Bowl and had never been in the water, he could have fear.
Yeah.
If he was in black as the ace of spades from the downtown Houston, had never been to the swimming program that's good in Houston today, or the YMCA, he could have fear.
Yeah.
So we changed. So after 3 months, I went to the general. Then he said, regimental commander and you run a pilot program. And I told the regimental commander I wanted to keep 100% of the drill instructors away from swim tank. They said it'd be like the mess hall. The mess hall, the drill instructors have a time to the minute that they have to hit the door.
Right.
And put the privates through on that time. And they're graded on the door time that comes out of the 3 shop. They said, I want a swim tank time inside. I'm going to hire water safety instructors from the city of San Diego who all need a second job. And there'll be no yelling, no screaming. There'll be a human being who's a water safety instructor, many of them females. And we're going to change the temperature of the water from freezing to bathtub temperature. 2 moves.
Yeah.
We're going to move the swim test away from the drill instructors that like to use it as punishment in the series and as threats the night before. We're moving it to receiving barracks where they don't have time for that shit.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to take the swim test first week while they're in receiving barracks.
Oh, wow.
And if they don't make it, they don't drop. They don't go to you.
Yeah.
They don't go to. So now there's not a swim problem in the series.
Mm-hmm.
You got a lot of third classes. You still bring them back in week 3. You still go to the swim tank and swim, but there's no fear guys and there's no failures
Right.
under you. There's only, you can improve them. Let's see if we can move from third to first.
Mm-hmm.
In 6 months, we developed a program. No failures.
Mm-hmm.
No. 0. None. We ran it out for the last 3 months, 9 months of data, went back to the general, said, take it to MR, take it to Paris Island, brief it. You guys in San Diego are Hollywood Marines, smoking pot, pencil whipping the data. We're not doing it that way. F you. So we said, okay. We came back. General Lukeman went from 2 stars to 3 stars, and he became manpower.
Mm-hmm.
He called in the 2 major generals from the 2 depots and said, I'm going to start watching attrition personally from swim training, giving you a heads up. And oh, by the way, here's the last year. The phone started ringing from Paris Island.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Can we come observe what you're doing? Are you the fucker who told me to get fucked last year? Anyway, not everybody that you recruit can become a Marine, but 25% attrition is a waste of the Marine Corps dollar because the Marine Corps is paying for that recruit's salary for every day.
Mm-hmm.
And every day he stays in training and doesn't become a Marine, that's a lost investment.
Right.
If he puts on the Eagle Globe and Anchor, that's a successful investment.
Mm-hmm.
And we move him on to his A school.
Right.
So we develop loops in training, in recruit training, and in A school training, where you drop but you come back as the first loop in a process to keep attrition where it should be. That is my good news story from Support Battalion.
Well, I can say,
MCRD San Diego.
I can say from my time, I was actual the staff NCOIC of the swim tank when I was there too, and the attrition rate for the swim tank was very, very low. Every now and again, you'd have one that just couldn't do it, but typically speaking, and it was ran very similar to what you're talking about now, was the support battalion swim instructors, the drill instructors. There's no yelling. There's none of that stuff. All the drill instructors have to stay outside. They can't come inside. The only ones that were allowed inside was the duty senior, and that was it. So it's ran very, very similar. Day one is you go through the basic, and then you start advancing throughout the week. But typically speaking, we got just about everybody through while I was there. So your program, what you were doing, was still in effect.
And you are West Coast or East Coast?
Yeah, West Coast. Yeah.
Yeah. I still suspect that there's differences in training, swim training and other training, between the 2 coasts. They have different environments. They have different distances, different facilities, supposed to be the same. There's always been a little difference, but I always thought that once General Lukeman started comparing attrition data, and that stayed in through today, between the coast, it was easy to drill down to find out if I had a problem in recruiting at a
Mhm.
recruiting station or substation, or if I had a problem in a battalion
Yeah.
or a series. Yeah, yeah. That's good to hear that we get some positive attitude and a couple things stayed around.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's still doing well. I'm assuming it's still doing it today. When I was there, they were still doing it. So, but yeah, it's
Okay,
good.
AJ, do we want to wrap
Yeah,
up? Do we have time for another story?
I think we probably should wrap this one up and then come back and do the next one, part 6, at our next recording.
Okay, we're done with support battalion, but I have to tell one story about the physical training division swim tank instructors of support battalion that happened outside the battalion. So that's an
Okay.
attention gator for the next time, and then we'll move on. It's been a pleasure talking to you, AJ, and hopefully a couple Marines listen to this and pick up. And I apologize to my daughter Charlotte for getting her born 4 months early. She was born when we got to San Diego, and I was a lieutenant colonel with a brand new baby, and our cohort family with wives were young sergeants and corporals. It was a good
Nice.
education for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, hey, Mike, thanks for coming on and doing this, man. I'm learning so much, and I love how detailed and how much history you give with everything around that was happening. It gives it a whole new light. So thanks for doing that. Much appreciated.
I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate what you're doing for the Marine Corps League. You have a great afternoon. All you Marines out there, check out your local Marine Corps League chapter. You'll be surprised. It's not the old boys anymore. It's everybody. So
That's
thanks,
right.
AJ.
All right, Mike. All right, to all the listeners out there, if you're struggling, need help, anything like that, don't forget the VA does have some great resources. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can always text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on that chat icon. Any of those options will put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But remember, one veteran life lost is one too many. I care about you. Mike cares about you. The whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, reach out to the buddies you serve with, ask them how they're doing. And if they need that helping hand, please give it to them. All right, Mike, one last time. Thank you. Much appreciated. To all the listeners out there, stay motivated, change your socks.